Dear friends, it's lovely to be back in Tulsa. I last was here 3 years ago for the conference which launched the vision of sacred activism that I'm dedicating my life to. So I feel very happy to be with you again. I want to give you a very simple but very urgent message today. And I want that message to have three essential components: a very profound warning, a very profound source of hope, and a way to put that hope into action. I believe three things. I believe that you and I, as members of the human race, are going into the eye of a storm, a perfect storm of crises, which are bound to test us to the utmost, perhaps even threaten our extinction and the extinction of a great deal of nature. I think you all know at 3 o'clock in the morning that the world is in terrible shape. There is a massive environmental holocaust going on. There is a proliferation of weapons of mass destruction in the hands of lunatics. There is an adoration of the corporate mindset that is strip mining the world and that nothing is being done to check. There is an ownership of the mass media by the mass corporations that are filling our minds with trash and violence and stupidity and celebrity trivia at the very moment in our history when we need inspiration the most. And there is, in all of our lives, a hectic, crazy pace that makes it very hard for any of us to connect deeply enough with the still silent voice of the Spirit. And when you bring together all of those crises, and when you realize that all of those crises are essential manifestations of a human false self, out of control, addicted to power, addicted to an entitled domination of nature, then you realize we are in very, very serious trouble. And anybody who realizes that is being challenged directly to bring the whole of their being to answer that trouble with their life. That is the first thing I believe. But if that was all I believed, and if I believed that we were just headed towards doomsday, I would have asked Tamara and Marlon, who are dear friends of mine, to have prepared some James Jones Kool-Aid. And on this beautiful morning, I would have invited you all to come up here and drink it and sing Kumbaya and We Shall Overcome with me one last time. But the second thing I believe is that this massive crisis is an evolutionary crisis. We have come as a human race to the end of one way of doing things. And we have come to the end of one kind of human consciousness. The consciousness that is grounded in greed and in lust for power and in entitlement and in selfish pursuit of private awakening. But the great good news is that that is not the only consciousness that is living in you and I. We are given as a birthright, and all the mystical traditions tell us this, divine consciousness. And that divine consciousness is one with the consciousness, the light consciousness and the light power that is creating the entire universes and all the universes in it. And that divine consciousness is not tribal, is not grounded in greed, is not driven by lust for power. It is a consciousness that recognizes unity in everything, that responds to all beings with respect and compassion, and that is absolutely tireless in its passionate compassion to reach out and help. And I believe that the deepest meaning of the crisis that you and I are now in is that it shows us very clearly two things. It shows us that if we go on living from the tribal ego, we will die out and take a great deal of nature with us, and this glorious experiment and all the revelations and all the great artists who have poured their gifts out to it, it will all be wasted, and it will all end in horror and madness and pain and terror. But it is also showing us that if we answer to the call of the supreme mystics amongst us, of the Buddhas and the prophets and the Jesuses and the Ramakrishnas and the Teresa of Avila's and the Rumis, who have all said to us, you are divine and you have divine consciousness at the core of yourself, and that divine consciousness can transform everything when you become an instrument. If we answer to that call, then this disaster will turn out to be the birth canal of a wholly new kind of humanity, a divine humanity that has learnt the terrible lesson of living out of its shadow, has relinquished its shadow and turned in humility and adoration and joy and hope to the divine consciousness within, and started acting from that divine consciousness in every realm of the world to transform horror into grace, apocalypse into the birth of a new way of being and doing everything. The third thing that I believe is that there is a force being born on the earth now that can help you and I become midwives of this birth that is trying to take place, and that is taking place in the middle of this massive and unprecedented crisis and death. And this force, which I have devoted my new book to, The Hope, which took 5 years to write, because trying to get clear about this force and trying to be helpful about this force nearly killed me, but I'm here and I am feisty and I'm not broken. This force I call sacred activism, because I believe, from my own inmost experience, that if you fuse together the two noblest passions in your and my heart, the passion of the mystic for God, this passion that burns in all of us to really know the source that gave birth to us, and the passion of the activist for justice and harmony and balance, the passion that also burns in all of us, in all of our consciences, to see the poor fed, to see animals respected, to see gays respected, to see women respected, to see justice done. If we fuse, you and I, in the core of our hearts, those two overwhelming fires that are the noblest fires of our human enterprise, then by that fusion, when you bring them together, what is engendered by them coming together is a massive third fire, a nuclear fire, a passionate fire, an overwhelmingly powerful divine fire, which is the fire of love and wisdom in action. And when that fire is born in a human being, when that fire is born in a Gandhi or in a Martin Luther King or in a Dalai Lama or in a Rigoberta Menchú or in a Jane Goodall, what happens is that that person becomes a living, fiery, tender, wild, brave, fearless instrument of divine love in action. And you and I can become those divine instruments if only we love enough and do the work and see the danger and realize that it is up to us in this generation, up to you and me, to go forward, knowing the death, seeing the birth, and try and birth in ourselves this third fire of love in action, of which Teilhard de Chardin wrote so brilliantly when he said, someday, after we have mastered the tides and gravity, we shall harness the energies of love. And then, for the second time in the history of humanity, we shall have discovered fire.